DJ Alvin in the house.
Hello, I'm Alvin, and welcome to Ask Alvin. That's right, this is my show. It's a question and answer show. That's all you need to know. Alright, we are getting right down to business here. Sam from Nowhere Special, because he didn't provide any more information, asks, what kind of show is this? Really? And what are your areas of expertise? I'm not going to entertain the first part of that question because I just stated that. However, my areas of expertise are pretty much lots of fantasy and useless knowledge. I am a great Def Leppard fan. I know a great deal about Transformers and a large amount of information about Star Wars. And I want, though, however, to answer any and all questions as long as it's not religious or political. I'm not going to get into debates with anyone. That's not what this is about. We're going to have fun. Okay? But I love mostly everything from the 80s. And I love science. I'm a huge MacGyver fan. Things like that. So, I don't care, though. That's the thing. I want random questions from real people, and I want to be able to answer them, you know? And if I don't know the answer, I will find out, and I will still answer the questions as best as I possibly can. And what goes without saying, people, is obviously, if you ask me a really annoying question I don't want to answer, it's not going to go on the show, okay? But we are going to have fun, and I promise you I'm going to try to answer every possible question that comes my way. Send these questions to askmyalvin at gmail.com. askmyalvy at gmail.com. Just in case people with only a brainstem are watching. Now, we're going to go on to another question. So, on to the second question. We have Ian from West Virginia. Nobody's given their last names, but that's okay. I'm not going to divulge that information in the first place. Why did I even say that? Ian from West Virginia says, I'm new to Transformers. What's that? Never heard of it. And I would like to know the difference, basically, between Autobots and Decepticons. What are the main differences? I'm glad you asked me that question. Ian, can I call you Ian? Well, you have vehicles that drive on the road, for the most part. And to start off with, the basic idea was the Autobots are cars and trucks and things. And they turn into robots, and the Decepticons, of course, also turn into robots, hail from aerial types of vehicles and things, which would be planes and jets, and there's tanks and assault stuff. The Decepticon armada is basically comprised of assault style vehicles, and the Autobots are trucks and cars, as I just stated. It's very easy, and later on they cross over and have different forms where the aerial bots come and they're Autobots, but they fly. And there is some continuity issues with the flying thing, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Basically, the real differences, though, is you have the Earthling-loving Autobots, who usually always get help from Earthlings, a select few, and that way the Earthlings can teach them about their world, because they're stuck here on Earth, because Cybertron was all used up. And because Cybertron was all used up, the bad guys, Decepticons, led by Megatron, they just want to go home, as far as Generation 1 is concerned. Of course, they get really bored with that idea when it's to realize how far away home is. And then they invent a space bridge, and then they go back and forth. But their home is still pretty much a desolate world. So they stay on Earth and they start trying to conquer it instead. And in order to do that, they try to gather immense amounts of resources, mainly of the electrical type, and they create this thing called energon cubes. They're a storage container for their lifeblood, which is energon. At any rate, though, to answer your question, Autobots are autonomous organisms that happen to be robots. So are the Decepticons. But the Decepticons actually were formed first, and they were a slave race. The Autobot symbol is actually a slave emblem that they turned into something good later. But the Decepticons actually were formed first out of the slave race, and then the Autobots were formed because they were peace-loving, and the Decepticons just wanted to compete and be military items and drive around and shoot everything and rule. And pretty soon, Megatron rose up through the ranks and started to lead, and that is where we have Decepticons and Autobots. Altogether, they are Cybertronians or Transformers. But that's a basic difference between Autobots and Decepticons. Autobots are peace-loving, yet they will fight. Do not get me wrong. They will fight. Perhaps I should explain just a little bit more. Just have to grab a snack real quick. Anyway, we have those that want to live back on Cybertron and those that want to stay on Earth, and they are both ranks, both factions, I should say. Some love the Earth, and some want to just go back to Cybertron, and you have both of those in both ranks. And Megatron kind of changes. He started to want to just go home, and then he realized he wants to rule everything. So he actually wants to rule over both Earth and Cybertron. So there you have that. So you have different kinds of Autobots and Decepticons too. You have Megatron, who wants to rule everything. You have Soundwave, who's the science officer. He will fight, and he does pretty well. But for the most part, he's a scientist, and he engineers everything that he uses, and their vehicles, and he creates the space bridge, and creates energon cubes. And you have the military, which is most of the Decepticons, tanks and planes and stuff, pretty much led by Starscream. And he is the air commander, and he is controlled specifically of the Seekers. The Seekers are a team of jets, comprising of Starscream himself, Thundercracker, Skywarp, and later Ramjet, Dirge, and Thrust. If I'm forgetting any, it's because I'm eating butter right now. And you have all sorts more kinds of robots out there later on. Gestalt teams are very interesting. You have Devastator, which is the first, and he is a 6 Constructicon team formed into one giant robot. And they all work together to control this robot as like a hive mind sort of idea. And a lot of people like to argue that the Gestalts are sentient themselves. Not so much, as they are controlled by all the parts. And the arm can fall off and another one can turn into an arm. And the leg can fall off and another one can turn into a leg. Not so much with Devastator, although they do that later on. For the most part, everything after Devastator, it doesn't matter if they're the arm or the leg, they can be any one of the pieces. So, then you have one other type of Decepticon, which is like a Guardian, and that's Shockwave. He stayed behind on Cybertron when they left a long time ago. And only recently did Megatron contact him through communications of some sort. They went all across the galaxy and finally found Shockwave, and between Shockwave and Soundwave they created the space bridge so that they can go back and forth between Cybertron. But Cybertron is a desolate, used up planet. Basically though, Autobots good, Decepticons bad. Glad you asked that. This is really good butter. Really good. So now, we move on to the next question. Okay. Third question is John from Spain. John from Spain must be in school. He asks, my math teacher denies that subtraction actually exists. Is he right? Okay. As in real life, we have the power to add things to each other. But in taking away, no matter how hard I try, I can't actually make this disappear. I can eat it, but it's still there. Okay. And so your teacher's kind of right. The number 1 actually comes from a tally mark. In ancient civilizations, they would just write lines to count with. We have what is called a real number line. 0's in the middle. 0's not even technically originally a number, but it is a value. It's nothing. And we have to have that value. You learn early on to add and subtract. And then you learn that multiplication is a bunch of addition. Subtraction really is adding. It's adding negative numbers to positive numbers. Because the real number line, like I said, starts as 0 in the middle. And to the right there's 1, 2, 3, 4. To the left there's -1, -2, -3, -4. When you see the math problems, 1 plus 2, let's say you say 1 plus 2, well we know that's 3. What you're doing is taking 1, you're adding 2 more places, and you're at 3. Now, subtraction is really not, that symbol for subtraction actually is negative. It should be moved up here, not in the middle. Negative, because you have 1, and you have a negative, -1. And that means you're taking 1, and if you add a -1 to 1, you get 0. Do you understand so far? You have 0 in the middle. 0 is very tasty. And you have, let's say you have the number 3, which is like 3 tallies out to the right of 0. And then, let's say you add a -2. Now until now you would say, I subtract 2. You're not actually subtracting. You're adding -2 to that 3. So you're still adding to it, but since it's negative, you're moving backwards 2 spaces, so you're back at 1. And that's why your teacher says that subtraction doesn't actually exist. And he's right. And no matter how much I move this hot dog through my body, coated with wonderful, wonderful mayonnaise, it's going to come out of my body. And it's going to go down the toilet. Parts of it will still be in my body. Parts of it will be in the sewer system. It's always there. So, we can't actually make things disappear. But we can add things to things. Because it's already here, we just add another item. That's why we have addition. We don't actually have subtraction. This is a very good question, and I'm glad you're brave enough to ask that. A lot of people don't understand. I didn't find that out until the first college math I ever took at Santa Fe College. And it blew my mind. The whole time I always said subtraction. I'm subtracting this, but I didn't realize I'm really just adding all the time. Think about it. All the advanced stuff that you learn, all the way up to calculus and everything, all the steps you have to take to get there, if you really think about it, are the base operations. And there subtraction. We're just moving along the real number line. And mayonnaise is in the middle. Well, zero's in the middle, but when you're a man's man like me, there's only one thing in the middle. That's mayonnaise. Thank you very much, John from Spain. It's okay to elaborate a little more about where you're from, but I understand this is a new show and you're all kind of shy. And then finally, the last question, question 4. I think I know this guy. This guy's a farmer down the street from me. Mr. McDonald writes to me, Alvin, is there a way that you could stop messing with my goats, please? That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much. Take care and have a great night.